Islam, Moorish kin, want to rise and give praises to the great God Allah and honors to his holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, El Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. Give honors to my Moorish kin here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. Give honors to our Grand National Seal, Grand National Emblem, National Flag, divine constitution and bylaws, and honors to all of you who are a living manifestation and personification of everything that our holy prophet brought to make us a nation, Islam. Well, this is a universal measure more as we bring into the manifest. And we just got something for the social highways and byways, so to speak. And this is actually dealing with a drawing in relation to dealing with the Moorish school of thought. Because in the past, we had many people that have asked us, what's the Moorish school of thought? What is it that we believe? What is it that we teach? Is it part and parcel of Al-Islam? We actually touched on some of these things in a previous class. And in the previous class, we were speaking of those who were dealing with a measure along the lines of thinking that Al-Islam, was a certain science that was brought to by man. Happy Holy Day, Muslim. Islamism, grand man. We love you, Brother Neil Bay. Goodmore, that's one of the prophets, Goodmore, Brother Neil Bay from the Moore Science Temple checking in. So, we dealing with different measures in regards to dealing with Islam. And a lot of people like to demarcate and separate and divide. So the whole goal is to bring about a unity, and that's what we're going to be basically spending our time to do, teach our people, because that's the most important thing more than anything, and as we always state, when angels make it rain, we're not concerned with where it falls, because one meant to get wet, they're going to get wet anyway, Okay, so I wanted to come from the Grand Quran, though. You see, this is a very ancient piece of work here. I had it for basically since I came into the way of life. So it's been a lot of handling going on over here, that's all. So nevertheless, this is the Yusuf Ali version. And the reason why I like this particular version, and there are two versions of this Yusuf Ali version. One, Islam, Grand Man. Yes, sir. We definitely open for it, Grand Man. Yes, sir. Walaikum salam, beloved brother Malik. Honors to you, Grand Man. Yes, sir. We definitely look forward to being on the show, brother, in due time, and we'll do. Yes, sir. We'll upload as well. So when we deal with this special drawing, and we're not getting into any specifics of certain aspects of a school of thought, but we're coming straight from the Grand Quran, because we know the Moors honor this special measure. We know that those who demonstrate Al-Islam or Orthodox Islam, they also honor the Grand Quran. And when you get into the book, you're going to find something deeper than what most people pay attention to. And the actual Moorish school of thought is right here in the book. So Moors would know how to trace themselves back in a lot of different ways. But we're going to get into it. We have to understand that when Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah alayhi salam received his revelation in regards to dealing with this book, we often state that he was initiated into the ancient mysteries of the ancestors. So by virtue of his prophetic revelation, he was being initiated, by the angel Jibril, who was a Comedian adept master. And this is going into a grand understanding of what Kemet really is. Because see, you have a Kemet that is on the manifest, and you have a Kemet that is above the manifest. You see? And that's dealing simply with what we call the macrocosmic aspects of creation, So coming forth from that special realm, the angels and the spirits that govern the solar stations and the stars, the suns that we are told of, in our Moorish Holy Quran, is actually mentioned in the Grand Quran. That the stars, a shooting star was symbolic to a flaming sword pursuing the jinn. So this is nothing that is outside of the pale or the normal view of Orthodox Islam, and we'll get into that on another level scientifically, one day. So nevertheless, dealing with these revelations that were received by our brother Muhammad ibn Abdullah, this was not something that was new. And many a time we get so caught up into what we hear, the deen of Ibrahim, Millah Ibrahim, what people call the religion of Abraham, and this is that which come down, through what they like to call the Israelite line, or that which come through the line of Ishmael. Now biblically, if you were dealing with this, through certain sciences and histories and math, you can say, well, 12 sons came from Israel and 12 came through Ishmael. And 12 and 12 is 24. So this brings you into a circle of a 24 elder measure, right? That's just, added for information, FYI. So dealing with this special draw and having this knowledge, before there was the religion of Ibrahim, which is often spoken of by Muslim scholars, there was the religion of Allah. You see, the deen of Allah. And so when you get into the deen of Allah, now we're going back to the root. This is before, this special measure touched the plane of things made manifest, basically. The deen of Allah is actually the state in which you were created. And Islam is a derivative of that, because Islam in the root coming from the attribute of Allah, meaning He is the peace, it comes out of the unfoldment. But when you go into the deen of Allah, that is the only way of life that has not been corrupted by man. You see, many have sought to claim the deen of Abraham or a portion of it as their own. You see, they have sought to claim not only a portion, but even divide it up into many different sects, and then you have schisms and different sectarianisms that come as a result of that. And this is not to speak or cast a negative light on anybody that may be practicing, in a different sectarian measure that has come on to manifest. We're just giving a historical reference, but in these sects, they are what you have, the school of thought or the school of theology. You would often hear 4 of them mentioned in Islam, and when you get to dealing with our people mentioning them 4, for the sake of the record, in Northwest and Southwest Africa, which is where our people mostly came from, we want to also emphasize before we go there that really Northwest and Southwest Africa is really dominated by a Sufistic ideology. So most of those in that special realm of Islam, they are actually dealing with a more mystic understanding of Islamism, a more esoteric understanding of Islamism. And even the science of Sufism began its development alone, you hear me say it all the time, through the brother Dhul Nun, known as the fish, by many. But Dhul Nun was actually born in Kemet in Egypt. And as we always point out, Dhul Nun respected by the scholars of Islam because they are Sunnis who recognize Tasawwuf as a science of the Islamic creed. In fact, you can't have Tasawwuf, without the Sharia, or the Sharia without Tasawwuf. They run hand in hand. You see? You're talking about the divine letter of the law, and then the, the literal letter of the law. Sufism or Tasawwuf dealing with the divine aspects of it, and then what they call the Zahiri and Batini. This is also mentioned in the Quran. And we want to make references to these things so you can do your research. They're going to come up when you put certain things in that I'm talking about anyway. You're going to come across this information. And this is what I want my people to do. If you hear and you have a time and you're listening to this special measure, and you are able, when you hear me make reference to certain things, you can Google it. Google it right then, and if you have a question, in the timeline, then we'll most definitely answer the question, no problem. So, again, when you get into Northwest, Southwest Africa, in the region of, Morocco, or what they would call Mauritania, so to speak, I would like to call the Ibero-Maurusian peninsula, so to speak, of that special era. But when you get into dealing with the school of thought that is dealing with those in Africa, the school of thought through Al-Islam is known as the Maliki school of thought. I won't go into the aspects of what they call fiqh, and ijma and qiyas, consensus and, knowledge and all that science. I ain't gonna get into those aspects because we simply dealing with right now what is the Moorish school of thought. And I'm only mentioning this again for your information, for you to do your research in these areas if you so choose. There are 4 madhabs mainly known, but this madhab here, the Maliki, is in that special realm according to Al-Islam. So the best school of thought would come basically out of the realm of your ijma being connected with the Creator. That's your divine logic, divine reasoning. Not rigid thinking based upon the text of men, but this is most definitely a state though where you have to be spiritually trained, so to speak, and divine guidance will begin to be your guide, so to speak. The things that you search, the things that you seek out will begin to manifest itself to you. The great God Allah will open up his way into the knowledge, the wisdom, and understanding. This is ijma when you get into, that mystic or that Sufi aspect, or like we say in the Moorish paradigm, understanding, the great God within. This is Moorish science, the school of thought dealing with self-mastery. And it derives from the teachings of the ancestors. The Moors were preservers of the science that came out of ancient Kemet. Our beloved brother who actually passed form and sacrificed his life for bringing this information forth, Brother G.M. James, in Stolen Legacy, he speaks on the Moors being the custodians of this special wisdom. You see, so these are all the same people. But what again is the school of thought of the Moors? Now, you heard us speak on the religion of Allah, and we want to actually go into exactly what this religion of Allah is called. And it's not only called the religion of Allah, we're going to give you a whole nother measure of it according to certain translators. But I want to go to an special measure here in the Grand Quran. And when we go into this special area, Moorish Ken, we encourage you to really get a grand drawing off of this because this is really key. Okay. If you go into Surah 2, Ayat 62, it states, Uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It states those who believe in the Quran and those who follow the Jewish scriptures and the Christians and the Sabians and any who believe in Allah in the last day and work righteousness shall have their reward with their Lord, and on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Now this lets you know it's not limiting, paradise to those who just call themselves Muslims here. It is telling you right here in the Grand Quran, right? And I want to make this clear because we don't want you to get a misconception of this. Remember, this is a translation that we're reading from. We're going to go into the essence of this special drawing, though. Don't get the translation twisted. So nevertheless, when it say those who believe in the Quran, that's one aspect. Now, all of those who claim to follow Islam and even Islamism, they state that they believe in the Grand Quran, right? But when you go a little further, it says, and those who follow the Jewish scriptures. What Jewish scriptures are they referring to? Now, we know that you have it where people refer to it as the Torah. Don't get the Jewish scriptures confused with a modern day Judaism, a Judaic ideology that was just created in the recent times, because many people will do this, you see. So those who follow the authentic way of life through that line. And then you have, it says, and the Christians. And they are simply referring to those who are of the Nazarian or the Nazarite or the Essenian, because they were actually known as the Nasar. Even if you go into the biblical text, right, you heard them refer to the band of Nazarites. That's the title that they were actually referred to, as opposed to being Christians. That's why they say Jesus of Nazareth, so to speak. And that's why in the Moorish teaching, you hear us use the term Nazarite, because the Nazareans are the Essenes, or the Mandaeans, so to speak. They're the ones having access to, the Manichaean and all other type of documents and scriptures, Dead Sea Scrolls and all that type of stuff right there, is supposed to be original transmissions of certain information. But again, you're talking about the original doctrine, which is referred to in the Quran as the Injil, the gospel, not the chopped up remix and screw version, that was demonstrated by the Rome here in the West. You see, so let us make that plain and clear. So it says after that, and the Sabians. You see, any who believe in Allah in the last day and work righteousness shall have their reward with their Lord, and on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Now, who are the Sabians? This is key. This is where the Moorish school of thought come into play at. This is where Moorish theology come into play at. See, the Sabians, have been overlooked in the Grand Quran by many modern scholars, many modern reformers of the way of life and so forth and so on. And there's a reason why the Sabians have been overlooked. We won't go into that right now, but we will go into telling you who the Sabians are. And they are mentioned here, and the school of thought of the Sabians are here in the Grand Quran. But again, I will say this is the Moorish school of thought before we go into it. Now, you might say, brother, Shahid, or brother comedian adept, what are you talking about? If you study the Orthodox way of life, you might say, where you get this from? And I would say I got it from research and study. And you're going to see how deep this demonstration get. And again, I'm gonna tell you like the brother Malachi York used to say, if you don't believe me, check it out for yourself. Because I'm gonna give you references here. And I wouldn't give you these references if I didn't know that you were gonna do the research, especially to try to prove the demonstration wrong. But you're gonna go off in there, and look for it, then you'll find, the truth of the measure. So again, I'm trying to educate those who are somewhat in the know, as well as those who may not be familiar with the Moorish school of thought in what we call Islamism. And you're going to see why I tell you this Sabian path is the school of thought of the Moors. So if you go and do the research, the people of the Sabian can be found mentioned in the Grand Quran. Actually, there's a surah that is named after these people. Now, modern scholars, trying to cover up certain things, and want things to be Arabized, they ain't gonna give this to you in HD, high definition. They ain't gonna give you this, as it is, but we gonna give you the truth and let you do your own research and you come to your own conclusions. So Surah 34 is the surah that I'm referring to. Been studying this for years. Surah 34 is the surah that we're referring to. And we're going to show you where the Sabians are actually mentioned before we go into any history outside of the Grand Quran. And this is Surah 34, Ayah 15 and Ayah 16. And you're going to become well familiar with this when I go to reading it. We're going to read actually a little further than that. We would actually go to Ayat 18. So let us start. And this is a key too that you can get to Moorish king. Anytime you're reading the Grand Quran and there's a surah, at the top of the surah has a certain name. And there's a certain element that's mentioned, a portion of creation, maybe. Like Surah 2 is referred to as Baqarah, it's the cow. You have the surah of the bee, the spider. You got different aspects mentioned. I like to tell Moors that if you were to actually take these titles and inscribe, these special characters of creation upon a wall, you would basically have Medunetta, hieroglyphics, because all of these things were actually depicted in the hieroglyphics of ancient Kemet. And if you know anything about Arabic, original Arabic is rooted in what they call Mudar. And this is coming through the scientists, the brother also being from Africa, Ibn Khaldun. You see? But that's a whole nother measure. We ain't going to go off the course. We're going to get to this surah right here. So every surah has a name, and that name is the heart of the surah. For example, if you go to Surah 24, Surah 24 is known as Al-Nur. So this is the light. And so the light is the main focal point of that surah. Yes, the whole surah is important, but there's a reason, that it is called what it's called, because this is where you are going to get the high level of the teaching from. That means there's a divine lesson, even along the line of Tasawwuf most times. Esoteric meaning is unfolding out of this, or that which is of the religion of Allah. So, starting at Ayat 15, listen to this. And I hope some of y'all made it there before me if you looking at this. It states, there was for Sabah, aforetime a sign, in their homeland, 2 gardens, to the right and to the left. Eat of the sustenance provided by your Lord and be grateful to him, a territory fair and happy, and a Lord all forgiving. But they turned away from God, and we sent against them the flood. We sent against them the flood and released from the dams, and we converted their 2 gardens arose into gardens producing bitter fruit and tamarisk, and some few stone lote trees. And that was the requital we gave them because they ungratefully rejected faith. And never do we give such a requital except to such that are ungrateful rejectors. Between them and the cities on which we had poured our blessings, we had placed cities in prominent positions, and between them we had appointed stages of journey in due proportion, travel therein secure by day and by night. You see, we'll go on a little bit. It said, but they said, our Lord placed longer distances between our journey stages, but they wronged themselves therein. And at length we made them as a tale that is told, and we dispersed them all and scattered in fragments. Verily, in this are signs for every soul that is patiently constant and grateful. Now, this is deep. This is deep. I'm gonna read this other ayat too, since I'm there. It says, and on them did Satan prove his true idea, and they followed him, all but a party that believed. I want to emphasize that a special measure right there. Now notice, these ones were given sustenance. They were given everything they needed for their provision. This is the people, the Sabah, the people of Sabah. We're going to go into a historical aspect of who these people are and why I'm telling you that they are, those who are also, known as Sabians. Now you see that there's a party that listened to Satan, meaning they deviated, but there's a party that also stayed on the path. So we're talking about the ones that stayed on the path, not talking about the ones that were misguided, by that lower self, so to speak. And when we talk about Satan, we're not talking about, a devil in pantaloons, red pantaloons with a pitchfork. We ain't dealing with that type of measure. We're talking strictly about the lower self when we talk about that Satan. So notice that it refers to a flood here. It refers to how they would had prominent cities. And, basically, this special area end up becoming a byword or an example for us in this era and time. Now, most Arab scholars will tell you, well, the people of Sabah, well, some of them, they had different opinions. Some of them would say, well, this was dealing with a people in the lower southern region of Yemen, in South Arabia, which that is true in all actuality to a degree. But if you learn and do the research in the history, you learn that what they call today the Arabian Peninsula, or the Middle East, the whole of the land was once known as Sabah, Sabah. You see? Now, this is a deep measure here when you get into dealing with this aspect, because this same portion was also known as Havilah, at one time, dealing with the land and special area where the Garden of Eden is said to be, right? So also when you go into this area, they also refer to it as Shabbat. But we're going to go a little further, in dealing with this special measure before we go just again into the historical aspects of it. So there were people of Sabah that were in the southern regions of Arabia. They actually have the writings that are known as Himyaritic. And the Himyaritic inscriptions in Mudar are really kindred to each other, so to speak. The Himyaritic inscriptions are known today in the land of what we like to call Ethiopia, which is really known, in its essence as Seba Mero. You see the connection? And they spell it Seba, coming from what they like to call Hebrew, but it's really Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite. So this Seba people are the same people as the Sabah in what they call the Arabian Peninsula. They were one people, the same people known as Shabbat. Who did these Shabbat or the Sabah people, where did they come from? What was their origin? Because they just didn't come on the scene. Now, even though they became a great nation or a great people or whatever, what were their origins? What lineage did they come from? There are those who already have the knowledge and know where I'm going. You already did the research. But Sabah, known as the Sabah Mire, which also is known to some as Abyssinia, or in Arabic, the Habasha, you see, they have that language kindred, in Eritrea. When you go into these areas of what they like to call Addis Ababa, you will find the Amharic alphabet. The Amharic alphabet is the same as that, what they like to call Ethiopic. This is the same special alphabet that is rooted in the Himyaritic. You see, this same alphabet, you can see traces of it in relation to dealing with the Phoenician language, which is also, a lot of people like to call it Greek, but there is no such thing as a Greek language, because everything being called Greek was really from ancestors. They only studied there, and the Europeans pushed it as a Greek philosophy. So this same language, it also goes into not only Phoenician, but known as Demotic in ancient Comedian teachings. They are connected to each other. That is if you know the DNA that connects the languages, which is called an abjad. The abjad are 4 letters of the abjad had to do with A, B, G, and D. That's another measure. This is all for your information. I'm just showing you how you can trace the people through the language and the land, through etymology, and historical aspects and landmarks, so to speak. So now that we have located what these people of Sabah were, now we can look at the civilization that was referred to in this Grand Quran. These prominent places, these cities, that had buildings all over them. And I just mentioned the area in Sabah. I mean, you talking about basically right down around the regions of the banks of the Nile. You talking about, going into the realm of what is known as Upper Kemet. Because if you know anything about the map in Kemet, don't get it confused as up being north, according to the way the Europeans like to establish it. Because actually north, the Upper Kemet is actually what will be looking like Southern Kemet on the map. And vice versa, what is looking like Southern Kemet is really upper. Then you have the same thing. What looks northern is really, lower Kemet. You see? So from that special aspect, the people in that special area, of Sabah Mire or the Sabah Meru people, which the Moors are rooted in that bloodline. We actually talked about this on the history of the Moors. You see, this is where the people of the Sabian school of thought are birthed from. In fact, if you go into the history, according to Islamic history, they would tell you that the father of Sabah or Sabi, you see, they say his father was actually Idris, Akhnuk, Idris, who is known as Tehuti to the ancient Egyptians. Now go do the research. Known as Enoch in your biblical text. This is the same one that they said was basically a priest of Adlan, as we refer to. And we know the Ad people represented the first people, right? There were different Ad people mentioned in the Grand Quran. It's even a chapter, where it refers and it talks about the Ad people. And we went into Adlan and all of that measure, in our past measure. So dealing with Tehuti, we're going to use the comedian name known as Enoch, to those biblically. Akhnut, known to those, from the Arabic standpoint, which is Idris. Hermes or Hermes, as he is known, or Hermes Trismegistus, you see, in the Greek philosophy, referring to the same individual. So this is said to be the one who actually began to be actually the first civilizer of ancient Kemet. For us dealing with the spiritual teaching, he was the one that took the teaching into Kemet. You see? Now, later on, when Moses came, Moses wasn't sent to bring a teaching to the Egyptians. It was said he was sent to deliver the Israelites. By this time, the Caucasians, or the head Caucasus, had came down out of the mountains of Europe and infiltrated the centers of Kemet, pillaged and overthrew and usurped the throne. And this is a lesson for my Israelite family, because they upset. They say the Egyptians enslaved, the Israelites. But in all actuality, it was not, the original Kemites that done this. This was those who had came down, usurped the throne, and not only were the Israelites so-called in bondage, but even the original people of ancient Kemet were taken in bondage. And you can have an extensive insight as well when it talks about the bondage of the people of Sabah in the Bible. S-E-B-A, Sabah, Sabah, S-A-B-A, these are the same people, family. Don't let an Arab fool you and tell you that they are different. These are the same people. These are your Sabians, whom it is said in the Quran, they are also basically their way of life is authentic according to the Quran. And the key on the reason why we have to emphasize who the Sabians are, because it's going to give you some history on Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that you don't know as well. So hold on to your fezzes. So dealing with this is special measure, as we have touched on this, knowing that this is the same one known as Tawheed, his son, in that land, according to Islamic history, this one Akhnut Idris, his son named Sabah. This is special one, was the one that basically came on the manifest, through that lineage. And he had that Sabian bloodline, so to speak. So these are the people your Nile Valley. The word Sabah, as we pointed out, also means 7. 7 is a number of perfection. That's another sign of it coming back to our Moorish kin. But when you get even deeper, you often hear our NOI family say they are of the tribe of Shabazz. And we actually talked about this in our last measure. In Shabazz are basically known as the people of Sabaz, because it actually was referred to as, I want to say Josephus, one of the European scholars, he referred to it as Sabaz, S-A-B-S, S-A-B-A-S, pardon self, Sabaz. You see? So when you deal with Sabaz, and it get deeper than that, because when you go in Greece, who they call Zeus was really known as Sabazius, a Sabazus. You see? Sabah meaning, dealing with the 7, and Zeus, dealing with God, the God of perfection or whatever. Zeus was really, they like to say a black deity, but, he was really a Moorish expression or whatever, which was really adopted from ancient Kemet. That was the Greeks' own way of putting it out there the way that they did. So nevertheless, tracing these Sabians, back to where they are, and the key is too, that's actually those who actually made the scimitar popular. It was the Sabians. And they adopted the scimitar from ancient Kemet, which was known as the Kafesh. Often when you see in the biblical text and it says that Moses picked up, I remember one time they say in one translation, the leg of an ox, and he slew his brother. One was hit with the leg of an ox. If you go and you look into hieroglyphics, you would often see the leg of an ox. It actually had to do with a constellation, representing the constellation of the thigh or the great bear and all that. That's when you get into astrologics. We ain't going there right now. But you would often see beside that a special so-called, leg of an ox, which is really the axe that it became later on. And you hear us refer to that in our Moorish teaching as one of our tools, and the scimitar is from the family of the axe. You see? That's another key or jewel that we're dropping on our Moorish king. So the angel Jibril was said to give Muhammad a scimitar, and Ali received a scimitar as well, but we can go into that on another measure. But nevertheless, going back to Kemet, again, that origin of the scimitar derived from the ancient Comedians, and I was just giving you that FYI for your information. Do the research on it. But getting back to the people of Sabah in that region having this civilization, there's only one civilization that that became prominent, that had a great city like that in that area, and that is the people of Sabah. The people that established that Nile Valley civilization, basically, or Sabah Mero. Because remember, there were also those which we call the Sabah Mero Kushite dynasty. You had the Indus Kushite dynasty, that valley civilization, which became known as the Indians or the Dravidian culture. These are the same people. You see? So these people of Sabah are the Sapiens. Now that we have established who they are, and we actually referred to the religion of Allah, and we say we was going to get into what the religion of Allah is, and this is very key, because before Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, he came into the revelation of al-Islam, he actually was taught by the Sabi'un Hunafa, who were known as truth seekers. So the Sabi'un Hunafa, guess what? The Sabi'un Hunafa are actually traced back again to the people of Sabah, a Sabi, that same lineage. And it's certain practices that they had, and I'll let you do your research, even down to the realms of the way that Muslims pray, the amount of times they pray. The Sabians actually deal with a 7-time prayer process. They pray 7 times. But you will notice that these same principles, some of them were adopted later into al-Islam, some of the traditions and the practices, which mean Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, certain things he learned from the Sebugatala, the Sabi'un Hunafa. These ones were basically the ones who aided in contributing to certain things that became a tradition to the Arabs. And it wasn't necessarily that which belonged to the Arabs, but it actually came from those Saba Kushites. You see? So, being that I done already mentioned it as well, it was the Sabi'un Hunafa, that I like to call them a priesthood, the Sebugatala, because the Sebugatala is key in understanding the religion or the way of life of the great God Allah. The Sebugatala is mentioned in the Grand Quran. And let me give it to you real quick, because I want to give it. I want you to be able to go yourself. It's actually Surah 2, Ayah 38, where it states our religion is the baptism of God. And we can, where it said, who can baptize better than God? And it is he whom we worship. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Now, dealing with this in special measure, notice it says the baptism of God. Now, don't think this got nothing to do with being slam dunked, in somebody's altar water, because that ain't got nothing to do with that in special measure. The baptism of Allah, and sometime in certain translations, it say we take on the color of God. Now, we know that Allah doesn't have a physical color. He doesn't have pigmentation like we do. It's not dealing with the color, stain, varnish, or dye demonstration. We're simply talking about taking on a particular way, traits and characteristics of divinity. That is the divine hue of the great God Allah that make us human, right? That's what charges up, we can say the soil of souls, so to speak, when it comes to dealing with us. So when you deal with the religion of Allah, or what we like to call again, the deen of Allah, it is known as Symbolic-You'Re, because that's exactly the word that's used for baptism of God, baptism of Allah. It's Symbolic-You'Re. So not only is the Symbolic-You'Re the way of life of Allah, but the Symbolic-You'Re was also a priesthood that was on the manifest in the form of the Sabi'un Hunafa, who actually began to prepare Prophet Muhammad to receive the mysteries of ancient Kemet through the angel Jibril. And thus he was taken through the level of 7 heavens. And so it is, you have 7 adept degrees when you deal with ancient Kemetian school. So when Muhammad was going through these stages of heaven, this was initiation process. He was unfolding through these levels along the line of self-mastery. We call it Sheduneta, know thyself, and thy Father God Allah. And at the highest state, he found himself in what you call the lot tree of the utmost boundary. In this special realm of, you also would find Beatu Mamor, and we talk about this all the time. The house of God, and we say, well, the nearest place that we can meet the great God Allah is in the heart. Home is where the heart is, but heart represents consciousness. So this is the true house of worship in regards to dealing with the creation on a high level of vibration. This is Islamism. This is what they teach in Sufism. You see, not only is it taught along the lines of Sufism, but this is pretty much a universal mystic way of life when you deal with any high, teaching. We call them the lofty teachings. So we don't just deal with, the exoteric or the outer expression of what we call Islam from man's perspective, because we know Islam is just the first degree anyway. You got Islam, you got Imam and Ihsan. Muslim is just the first degree of you being who you are. We talk about this all the time. Muslim, Mu'min, Mushinun. These are the 3-step ladders that are mentioned in the Grand Quran. You see? So when you get into the highest realm of the Symbolic-You'Re, it means to be immersed in the divine wisdom or immersed in the divine mysteries of God. And we call this know thyself. Because God is a mystery when you are looking for him in something outside of yourself. In other words, his spirit, his rule, that rule Allah within you. This is where you are allowed to become in touch with the great God within you. So when you speak of the Moorish school of thought, this is what you have to have in mind. It's a high science. It's not just a religion where you are demonstrating rituals. And this is not to make a mockery of one demonstrating ritual. Islamism is not just, where you go in to make wudu, and you cleanse the parts of your body, and that's it. If you make wudu, then know the meaning of wudu. As we talked about washing your hands away from the things that you have done. The hand is symbolic to the mind anyway, due to its ability to mold, to shape, to retain, to hold, to grasp. This is what the mind does. That's why the hand is symbolic to the mind. So when you wash your hands with water, as the prophet say, you keep your body clean with water. If you're washing your hands with water, this is one of the rites of Al-Islam. That's what that's symbolic to. You're really washing your consciousness, purifying your mind. You're purifying the spiritual senses from the muck and the mire of materialism. You wash, your arms and your elbows all the way up to your elbows. You washing your mouth, foul things, vile things that you may have spoken, things that you may have harmed one with, whatever the case may be. You wash your nostrils, you see, because we know that if you ain't careful, you can be breathing the breath of death, especially living in this time now dealing with coronas, but I'm just using that as an example. But you're washing away those things that dealing with the senses. You're cleaning your face. When you clean your face, you're cleaning your face so that you may be presentable, not physically, so to speak, but presentable on the level of your deeds, your ways, and your acts. One say, man, that one got a clean face right there. That's how they demonstrate it in the street. When you got a clean face, that's like credit. That's like good credit. The only difference is, it's cleaning your face, so that you may be face to face with the great God Allah. And you do that by going within. This is the waj or the ujet that you hear me talking about, which is also rooted in Kemet. The word waj, used for whole self or inner self in the Quran, can be traced back to ujet, that eye of Heru, that eye of Ra. You see, so you see how deep these teachings go when you getting on the elevated level. Now, some people that have no knowledge or they are steeped into the ritual, they're going to say, oh, well, he adding this, he doing that. Go do the research and then look at it for yourself. Everything that I said, because I ain't saying something to you that I can't back up. I just ain't finna pull out a whole bunch of books, and put all this stuff up here. I'm just using this particular book, at this particular time, because it suffices, and to give you an understanding, if you are rooted in these teachings, as to where the Moorish concept of, theology or the school of thought derives from. It's right there. And the only people that ain't accepting this is those who it belongs to. You see? And so this teaches you, again, self-mastery, purification of the mind, or as it states in the Quran, purification of the nerves. You have them levels of the nerves. You already know what that is: bestiality, consciousness, and felicity. So, being that we have established this, we want to go to another portion here as well. Well, since I'm here, I might as well go to this special aspect, where he states, it says, the fools, and this is Surah 2, Ayah 142, and I'm going to read 43 with it. The fools among the people will say, what have turned them from the Qibla to which they were used? And you're supposed to say, to Allah belong the east and the west, and he guideth whom he will to a way that is straight. Now remember, we said in the other measure, if you go Surah 2, between Ayah 115 and 112, he would say neither, it don't matter whether you turn toward the east or the west. So whithersoever you turn, there's the face, the waj, the presence, the waj, you see, of the great God Allah. So the direction of east and west is not necessarily dealing with the manifest thought. It's actually dealing with a thought pattern, so to speak, but not something that's on the manifest as in direction from that special area. Even though, yeah, Muslim face the east physically, but how do you face the east spiritually? You face the east spiritually by turning toward the Qibla that is within you. Qibla in the acts of dealing with Kaaba. Qibla dealing with Kalume, a Kaaba. See, that word Qibla dealing with direction is at its root. The same word has to do with the heart. Then we just talked to you about the house of Allah, Be'atama Moor, M-O-O-R, the house of Allah within you. You see, this is more science. And it's our duty to give you the truth now. Not half step with it, but give it to you. Now, what you do with it after that, it's on you. So when you deal with this in special measure, knowing that the true direction of the Kaaba is within, and we're talking about the heart, and I'm doing this, but don't think I'm pointing at the blood pumping organ. I'm talking about the self. I'm talking about the consciousness. The consciousness of you being one with the Creator. This is the grand aspect of monotheism, or what we call Tawheed. You see? So when you go into this special drawing, and now that you have this knowledge, you understand that also Ka and Ba, dealing with consciousness in ancient Kemet, has to do with what they call the spirit and the soul. That's the Ka and the Ba. You see? This is that ancient way. This is that old time religion. This is the way of life that was on the manifest prior to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. This was how he demonstrated before, there became an organized way of life that we know today as Al-Islam. So he was bringing you back or returning it to you. He wasn't bringing you something that was new. But remember, we told you Kemet was infiltrated. So they had received the truth through one known as Idris or Enoch, or Tehudi, so to speak. But there was a deviation after the throne was usurped. And again, I charge my Israelite brothers and sisters to place the blame where the blame truly is, and then we can unite as a people. Because you realize the original Kemites was enslaved with you as well, that these were those who were actually of what we call the Hyksos or the Hyksos. Then you understand what happened and why there's so much confusion now. You see, so when by the time Moses came on the manifest dealing with that aspect, he was dealing with a totally different people. He wasn't dealing with the ancient Kemites. But I'm going to keep it moving, though. That's just for your information, FYI. So, there's one last point here that's being made. It states, actually, we got another point after this. That'll be the last one. But it said, thus we have made of you an Ummah, justly balanced, a nation, that ye might be a witness over the nations, a Shahid over the nation, right? And an apostle, a witness over yourselves. And we appointed the Qibla to which thou wast used only to test those who followed the apostle from those who turned on their heels from the faith. Indeed, it was a change and momentous except to those guided by God, and never would God make your faith of no effect. But God is to all people most surely full of kindness and most merciful. Now, this particular scripture, because we don't want our Orthodox family to get up in arms. Oh, man, that was revealed because, the unbeliever was still on the manifest. Yes, we are familiar with that history. That is honor, but we only giving our people the higher degree of understanding and showing you the school of thought of the Moors in Islamism. We honor that history as far as dealing with the direction on the manifest, but we're teaching you tasawwuf, going within. That's also a part of Islamism. For the record, FYI, for your information. Right? And so now we're going to bring this measure to a close here. Let me see. And this is very key here. There's one truth, Moorish kin, and that special truth will always guide the people to oneness and unity. If the people choose to be united, if they really want to be one, there's no need for us to be divided in this special era and time that we living in. That's only coming because many people have been misguided, so to speak, along the way. And we don't speak from a level as if, we are superior according to what we know. We just giving our people the truth. We're going to bring the people into oneness. And this coming from Surah 5. And Surah, by the way, actually mean degree or stairway to the heavens. All right. Surah 5. I want to see how far I want to go here. Well, we're going to actually deal with Ayah 48. It states, to thee we sent the scripture, in truth confirming the scripture that came before it, and guarding it in safety. So judge between them by what Allah hath revealed, and follow not their vain desires, diverging from the truth that has come to thee. To each among you, this is the key, to each among you we have prescribed a law and an open way. He would have made you a single people, but his plan is to test you in what he hath given you. So strive as in a race in all virtues. The goal of you all is to Allah. It is he that will show you the truth in the matters in which they dispute. This has always been one of my favorite ayats or signs. And the word ayat too can be traced back to Kemet. Matter of fact, the flag that you see Ra, the netter planted in the ground, it is known as the ayat netter, the ayat. You see? I-A-T, ayat. So that's another measure. All this Comedian science in here, and many people still want to deny the Comedian connections, of ancient Kemet in the teachings of Islam. Matter of fact, if we go back just to the mother of Ishmael, she was Egyptian. You see? Hajar, Hathar, Haru. You see? A whole city was set up for her in Mount Sinai, where Moses went to get his tablets from. That's really the city of the mother of Ishmael, Haru, Hathar, Hagar. That name she got came from the ancient goddesses. And you see in that region, that's why Moses talked about the golden ass, ones that begin to worship, the idols, the Israelites that went in the land, the cow, that had the horn, with the crescent moon, so to speak, in the form of the horn with the sun disk in it, that you often see depicted in a lot of Christian imagery when they go to talking about the golden calf or the golden ass and so forth and so on. We know ass is really a donkey. So, but when you get into that special aspect of dealing with this cow, that was symbolic to the ancient mother of Kemet, which you see all the goddesses and the queens of Kemet with that same, crescent, and then the sun disk there. So Ishmael's father, being Ibrahim, an ancient Cushite from Mesopotamia, and mother from Kemet, well, it ain't hard to tell, who the Arabs, who their daddy was. So next time you see one of them acting crazy, you say, beloved, who your daddy? Nah, I'm just messing with your family. But they come from the same people is what we're getting at. So again, the reason why I read this as special measure in the Grand Quran, he state that he sent a scripture to a people. Not only did he send one, but he said that the scripture that was sent, it confirmed what had came before it. For example, if those are in their right mind who study what they call Christianity, paid attention to the Bible, in their book of Malachi, it said that a book of remembrance would be sent to them. Right? Even the brother Yehoshua said, he had to depart for the comforter came. Even in the book of Revelations, I want to say chapter 14, it refers to, the Lamb delivering the 144,000. Then it talked about those who would come after the Lamb coming through a messenger who would have the everlasting gospel to those remaining on the earth. Because people got caught up in, who all included in the 144,000? If you read further, it say one was coming behind the Lamb. And we would tell you that was really Muhammad ibn Abdullah. But guess what? There were angels or messengers that also followed them in the book of Revelations. And then you understand where the seventh angel, Noble Drew Ali, come in at. But that's a whole nother lesson as well. But it's just a blessing here and information to give you since we mentioned it, right? So nevertheless, if one was coming forth and the everlasting gospel was coming, a book of remembrance to come on the manifest, then this has to be fulfilled. The word we find out when I looked up what they like to call Hebrew or Proto-Sinaitic, the word remembrance is from what they call a zakar, Z-A-K-R, K-A-R, or sometimes K-R. In Arabic, the equivalent is zikr. And you see the Sufis with the Sufi beads that they have around their neck often, and they will be zikring. You see, often maybe 33 or 99, dealing with the 99 names and so forth and so on. You see, they zikring, right? Calling the remembrance of the great God Allah. And you often hear us speak of the actions of the soul. When we speak of the soul, call it not the soul, but its action, thinking, willing, reasoning, understanding, and remembrance. The remembrance of Allah. But there was to be a reminder, a book of remembrance. Now, one aspect of the book of remembrance, dealing with it from a Moorish perspectives, the book of remembrance has to do with the Akashic records, the book of Allah's registry of remembrance that's right here. You see, dealing with the Moors. Another aspect on the manifest dealing with the book of remembrance has to do with this book, because that is actually an attribute of this book. It's known as the book of remembrance. That's why in the Quran, you would often hear it speaking in a language as it's reminding, remember that this happened. Remember the Israelites went through this state and we gave them manna and quail and they turned away even after that. Or even they got a whole chapter when you go in here, which one of the favors of the great God Allah will you deny? So it is to call you to remembrance to your Lord, because man had deviated. So this book sent as a confirmation of what came before it. It wasn't sent, to bash Yehoshua. It was sent to support Yehoshua. And if you read the Gospel of Barnabas, then you will see that Yehoshua, that comforter that he referred to, was really Ahmed, as he called him in the Gospel of Barnabas. It was Muhammad that came behind him, right? So Muhammad came with the book of remembrance. But guess what? When it comes to the Moors, being that we derive our power and our authority from the Grand Quran of Muhammad, and this is really the Comedian interpretation and the uniting through the Comedian teaching from an adept's perspective now, deriving our power and our authority from the great God Allah through the Grand Quran, this is where we derive it from, this same ayat here, because it tells you, to each among you we have prescribed a law in an open way. But guess what it is saying here in the Arabic? Because see, I know the Arabic. I can actually translate a Quran if I want to. So when you deal with this in special measure here, to each we have given a people, we have given a law in an open way. This prescribed law in Arabic is referred to as what? Sharia. The word Sharia is referred to here. You see? This is where you are getting into a law Sharia, though. You're not talking about Sharia has been made by man or the Arabs done remixed and chopped and screwed. Not that Sharia. You see? So when you get into each people that he has given a prescribed law, he gave a law during the time of Adam. He gave a law after the time of Adam. Through every prophet, he brought a law on the manifest. Moses brought a law. Yehoshua, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they brought law on the manifest. It wasn't different. It was what was needed for the time. But then he said one day he was going to raise up a witness from all people. A messenger will be sent to all people. An apostle will be sent to all people. A prophet will be sent to all people. And see, that's where Prophet Noble Ali come from. And as we pointed out to you, even Aisha said, say that, he is the seal of the prophet, but not the last. You see, and seal simply mean that he was authentic, because many people thought Muhammad ibn Abdul, the Prophet Muhammad, that he was a, imposter. They was trying to charge him as not being a prophet. So the prophet was stamped with the approval of the great God Allah. It's a stamp of authenticity. So that's why she say he is the seal. Say he is an authentic prophet sent by Allah, but he is not the last. This is what Aisha said. Now you got a lot of them now say, well, that's not transmitted right. That's not the proper measure. But even if you look up the word katam from last, you find out that's a whole nother measure, and it ain't what people think it is. But that's a whole nother teaching that we can do later. But just FYI for your information, we giving that to you as well, right? So nevertheless, if he gave each people a law in a prescribed open way, and he said he did this, he said that if he would, he'd have made us a single people. But his plan is to test us in what he has given us. So strive in a race in all virtues. The goal is to us all going toward the great God Allah. The pyramid has 4 corners, but it leads to one, which is actually the 5th point. You see? So if all of us was on the pyramid, on a corner, each of those 4 corners, right? And we decided that we was going to go up to the top of this special pyramid, coming from these 4 corners, we would all meet at the center. You see? And at the center, we will all meet at the same destination. And this is why I'm saying to each of us, the goal of us all is to God. And it is he that will show us the truth in the matters in which we dispute, which after clear knowledge, we shouldn't be disputing at all. This is universal knowledge. This is knowledge that brings us into oneness. This ain't a knowledge trying to elevate more science above anything else. This is a knowledge that brings us into the truth and oneness and unity. But if you don't have, the yin and the yang, so to speak, or the internal aspects and the external, you're going to be caught up in one aspect, and this is where your conflict will lie. You see? So our law and prescribed and open way came in the form of the circle 7. In the circle 7, as brought by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, was divinely prepared. And everything in the circle 7, you can find a support. You see? You can see a confirmation of the things we learn. And Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated that without going through the circle 7, you would be lost in this book anyway. Because see, somebody going to Arabize you. They're going to tell you in order to be a Muslim, you got to be Arabite. They're going to tell you that you don't have no culture. You know, nationalism is not a part of Islam. Well, if that's the case, then stop saying that you descend from Prophet Muhammad. Stop saying that you're Arab then, if that's the case, right? If nationality don't matter, right? No, but they have scholars who would trace themselves back through the lineage to Muhammad. And if we claim our nationality, proclaim it, knowing that we come from those who we derive from in the West, we also see through the Sharifdin and the Alawite line that we too have a bloodline that's traced back to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Remember, the Arabs in their line originally came from the Cushitic and the Kemetic bloodline. So that's not strange. That's not something, you know, that we should be surprised about. And this is also for the information of those, you know, who claim that they are demonstrating Pan-Africanism, that always like to talk about the Arabs. Let's talk about the original Arabs. You see, they didn't look like they look right now. That's a whole nother story. We're just giving you that for your information. So now that we have established the Moorish school of thought as being, you know, the deen of Allah, the religion of Allah, you know, what we call Symbolic-You'Re, you see, this is the Moorish school of thought. It is mentioned, it is confirmed, it is right here in this Grand Quran. And do the research and the due diligence on everything that I say. The video right here. So anything you go in here and do research on, you're going to find that it, just how I stated it, that's how it is. And that's why I never really put a lot of stuff out there. You know, I put little articles here and there out there, but I never state sources, because if you're a serious researcher, you're not looking for something to just be handed to you. So one, give the information, and then you go do your own research. That's what's going to root you in what you stand on. That's what's going to make you unshakable. That's what's going to make your foundation unbreakable, because you went and did the research on your own. Now, I had a choice of just accepting, you know, the teachings of our holy prophet and just going along with what was said, and that's it, and don't even get, but didn't we do that under the auspices, so to speak, of our Christian ideology and identity when we were demonstrating that? We just believed what we was told. And we did it for centuries. And all of this was adopted from a time of slavery, right? You know? So now, being in this new era in time, this is the age of information. The people want to know the truth. You couldn't hide the truth if you wanted to. And that's a good thing, because it makes it hard for somebody to mislead and deceive someone now. But I guarantee you, you'll never see me get up here, anything that I post, that I don't have receipt for. You see? Now, whether you accept the measure, that's a whole different measure. And this is all to bring unity to the people. So my purpose of doing this is not just to give you information, just to give you a history. Hopefully, it will heal some of the wounds of our people that are hell-bent, so to speak, on division when it comes to what school of thought it is. And this trickles down through the various different organizations, be it the MST of A, be it the NOI, you know, be it, you know, the Hebrew Israelite community, the Nuwabian community, you know, be it those who are still into the biblical, those who are in different lodges, those who are demonstrating Pan-Africanism. You see? That's what these posts are dedicated to. Not to uplift the Moorish American government over anybody else, but let you know your government is the umbrella under which we can all unite. I mean, you're sitting up under the other one, been under that one so long, you might as well come on home and try something else. And that's simply saying come into your government. You know, you can be who you are. Your identity won't lose. You won't lose yourself in that. Instead of just merely being, the temple, now you become a Moorish consulate now. Instead of being a temple, in the NOI, now you become a Moorish consulate now. You see? If you demonstrate law, and that's what you do, then be one who demonstrate law, under your government. If you adopt a lawyer, whatever it is, aid and assist your people. Bring your talents home. That's the collective unity, self-determination, us being one people. Because the divine creed, as we just went over, that come through the lineage of our mother anyway. She the first teacher, right? It even say that in the Moorish Holy Quran, that they were to teach long promised sons and set their souls on fire with love and holy zeal, right? But then your nationality had to do with your decent nature, that portion of your father. Again, nationality, divine creed, mother and father. Honor your mother and father that your days may be long upon the land. That being said, Islam, Moorish kin, Ramadan Mubarak to those who are still doing the fast, and gratitude, we love you. Peace.